Everyone, happy Thursday to you. One of my episodes where I get to talk to an author, and I don't only get to talk to an author today. Oh my goodness, my voice. Apologies to those watching live and our radio audience on Wednesday nights. This will air 3 weeks from now, as always, on Wednesday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, audio only. And you hear that you don't have to look at me, but you get to hear all the great stuff that Jessica is going to talk about tonight. A passionate writer, first time novelist, which is terrific. Not a first time author, because she put stuff out there in third grade, which is pretty darn awesome that she knew she wanted to do this. So, of course, Jessica is a friend. You've probably seen her in the chat room commenting numerous shows. We've known each other for probably more than a decade. Oh, definitely better than a decade now. We met in West Virginia, which is the epicenter of tonight's conversation. So I just want to give a plug to my sort of sponsor, unofficial sponsor, getting towards official sponsor. Not every episode, some of them are controversial, as you know. I don't want to bring my sponsors into it, but my good friends at Misty Mountain Mead, award winners, Butterscotch and Honey won a silver at a big competition last month. Fenrir Spirit, my favorite, the wolf, of course, the spirit of the Nordic wolf, and this won a bronze medal. And then here, I worked it out. This is going to be released in the middle of October. You can go to mistymountainmeadworks.com, or you can friend them on Facebook, and you will see what this is, because they kind of let the cat out of the bag, even though they said, Joey, please don't tell anybody till the middle of October. So I'm going to do a quick video by the fire pit sometime in the middle of October, as autumn is really descending upon us. I'm going to open this and do a live tasting, which is probably going to be breaking some rules, but what the heck else is new? So Misty Mountain Meadworks, they have a whole array of stuff. Sorry. As you can see, all these beautiful bottles with all this. They're always trying new things. Richard the Meadmeister is featured in my fantasy novel, Aldemir's Dilemma, and not in book 5 of Cannon and the Quill, which is coming out somewhere between, I think, on towards Halloween or my birthday. But I think probably on towards Halloween. The 5th pirate book is coming out, Cannon and the Quill. But in the 6th one, I'm going to introduce a version of Richard in that one, which will be fun, because when you're a novelist, you can do whatever the heck you want in your world. I'm sure Jessica will talk about that tonight. Oh, that's a question. Maybe I'll ask her, are there any people in the book who are based on anybody, and see where that goes. So let's just roll the opening, get in. I see there's a lot of comments in the chat room. I'll get to those during the opening. While I think about it, next week is Peter Thiel in Silicon Valley, the CIA connection, Peter Thiel, who built J.D. Vance, all that kind of stuff. Definitely tune in for that. And then I'm going to have a historical novelist on. So having more writers on, which I absolutely love. Mike Cobb. If you know the Caleb Carr Alienist series, this man is at that level. I have not enjoyed a book this much. His book, I devoured it. I finished it way ahead of schedule to prep for the show. Just beautiful. Late 1800s Georgia murder case, based on a true story. Like I said, historical fiction. So anyhow, let's roll the intro, and I'll see you guys in the chat room in about 2 seconds.
There exists a realm beyond our wildest dreams, a realm beyond reality that the gatekeepers and guardians have always told us consists of nothing but tricks of the eye, weather balloons, swamp gas, sand cranes, fairy tale myths of monsters, crackpot conspiracy theories, and desperate cries for attention.
We know this realm exists, and it's just beyond the horizon. The preset path, the well-worn walkways where the cynics want us to stay.
Instead, give this a listen. Put on your headphones, adjust your volume, close your eyes, and fasten your mental seatbelts, because the twilight-tinged turnoff from reality's alluring highway is looming just ahead.
We're about to leave the plane of the easily explained, the couldn't possibly be's, and the no way I just saw what I saw's, for the spaces and places where everything is possible, and if you stay long enough, even probable. We're about to take a journey into the outer realms.
And tonight, the Outer Realms is Appalachian folklore, Appalachian what's called granny witch magic. I love it that the granny is in there. Something that I came to rather late in my journey in West Virginia, and I was absolutely fascinated by it. Absolutely fascinated by it. And Jessica is really the one who knows so much about it. So I'm going to leave it to her to talk about it. I'm just going to mention one little thing that I happen to love as we go along the way, but she's got plenty. So let's read her bio and bring her on screen, shall we? Jessica Nuckles was born and raised in Appalachia and has always had a fascination with the rich history and traditions of the hills and hollers of her youth. She caught the writing bug early after winning a creative writing contest in the 3rd grade. When she isn't writing, Jessica enjoys sharing her light with the world through her other passions, and I'm going to let her talk about those passions at the end of the show, at the beginning of the show. So we're not going to talk about it. Jessica lives in West Virginia, the Mountain State, where she was born and raised with her husband and 2 children. The Rhododendron Society is Jessica's first full-length novel. Jessica's been previously published in the horror anthology Winter of the Raven, terrific title, by Poe Girl Publishing, and will be featured alongside other horror authors in the upcoming horror anthology, also by Poe Boy Publishing. So there's Poe Girl and Poe Boy. I will ask her about that. It's called Gore for Demons, a Halloween anthology. Jessica doesn't seem like the Gore for, so we're going to talk about that, what her story is about. Book 2 of the Rhododendron Society series, so awesome. Sugar Maple Secrets will be published in 2025, another winning title. She's also working on a companion oracle card deck, exciting, the Appalachian Wisdom Oracle, and I will be first in line for that because, like I said, this is all so fascinating to me. So here we go tonight. Hi, Brian. Hi.
Hello.
We have you on this side of the mic tonight.
I know,
So
it's a little
cool.
weird.
That's okay. I bet you're gonna settle right in. So we're gonna start with easy stuff that should roll off the tongue for you, be readily accessible. Because I'm gonna ask you about you. You can go as far back as you'd like. That's fine. Sometimes this question takes 20 minutes for a guest, and I start to scratch out questions as we go. But when you are not Jessica Nuckles' first time novelist, although that's quickly going away. Who are you? Where do you come from? And how did you get to us tonight?
Well, first time novelist. Yeah, that I'll be honest with you, that all still sounds pretty crazy to me. Yeah. I still have a bit of trouble when people come up to me and say, oh, something about your book or something about being an author. And I'm like, every time somebody says that, still kind of freaks me out. But yes, so you said in the bio, I grew up here in West Virginia. Funny enough, I grew up one of those very, very out in the middle of nowhere hollers that no one knows about unless they also live up that holler. Went to a very tiny little elementary school that no longer exists.
Oh, wow.
But I will have to credit many of the teachers from the elementary school for where I am today. And really, even the middle school, the educational system for such a small rural community that I grew up in was fantastic. It's definitely a highlight of the area. They really strive. If there's lots of, poverty where I grew up, as a lot of people know about West Virginia now, the drug epidemic, gets in the way of a lot of stuff. And those teachers, that school system, they try very hard to get the kids, the best education they can. And I was one of those, and that really helped. So, and elementary school all the way through. The teachers were amazing. The creative spark, my creative spark's always kind of been there. In third grade, I wrote that story for a creative writing contest. I won. And I'll let you guys in on a little secret for now. For book 2 for Sugar Maple Secrets, I'm actually using a little idea from that story and expanding upon it now that I'm older.
That's awesome. So what was that? Well, can you tell us what the story was about without giving
I think,
something away?
So, and I don't want to say too much because there's a little bit of a tie-in in book 1 that kind of walks you over. I was very obsessed when I was younger. I mean, my love of writing really comes from my love of books in general. I have always been a huge book nerd. I read constantly. I mean, I watch TV, I do movies. You know, I'm not, one to, I will definitely sit and do a Netflix binge just like everybody else. But my favorite pastime is reading. I enjoy that more than anything else. And that came from an early age. That started with the back bedroom of my grandmother's house and all the way through school. So I was obsessed with Nancy Drew mysteries.
Oh yeah, I was reading the Hardy Boys.
Yes, Hardy Boys, Nancy Drew, the Bobbsey twins, like all the good stuff. And so it was sort of like a Nancy Drew-esque mystery. If anyone else is a Nancy Drew fanatic, you may remember there's one that's like The Secret of the Old Clock. Well, I sort of took her little, trope, and in the third grade, you don't really realize you're stealing quite as much as you do when you get older, and used that to make my own version of one of her mysteries.
Well, I will tell you, Jessica, and first of all, you're off to a great start and you're closely guarding your content. And so you're learning this in a hurry. It's wonderful to see. My college mentor who went on to win the James Mitchell Prize and edited Archaeology magazine, Dr. Richard Wertheim, brilliant. He always said to us, steal everything you can. Mm-hmm. And he's not talking about plagiarism. He's a college professor, ran a department, but it's amazing to me sometimes that I'll revisit a movie or a TV show that I watched 30 years ago. And I'll say to Tanya, holy mackerel, that's that in my book. Because there are no original ideas, right? There's only two kinds of books, boy meets girl, or two kinds of stories, boy meets girl, or one person meets another person, I guess we would say in this day and age. And the other one is Stranger in a Strange Land. And Kate has that Stranger in a Strange Land with a little touch of the other, your heroine. How much Nancy Drew is she, looking back on it?
Kate's interesting. She's a little bit of a mix. She's got some Nancy Drew in her. She's got some of that adventurous, spirit, definitely. She's got a lot of me in her. The coffee obsession is definitely mine.
Cool.
But it's funny, before I really, really started taking writing seriously, I was such a heavy reader. I would read other authors talking about how, their characters would kind of take a life of their own. And, they'd start out with little things and then they just built and took over. Kate was really my first experience with that. I had little things that I knew I wanted her to be, and then she just kind of took over from there and grew into the character she was. So.
That's cool. We're going to talk about process a little later, but I'm also going to flow and I'm going to go where this takes us and we'll get everything done because I feel like I can do it. Similar to dreams, I subscribe to the idea that every character is an expression of me. A lot of writers go that way. Where are you on that? Like,
I definitely think all of my main characters have me in them. Yeah, definitely. I'm working on something right now, and it's funny. I'm actually going into it with the intention of making her sort of like the shadow side of me.
Yes. Yeah.
So, there's a lot of that in there. Yeah, all of my main characters definitely have a little bit of me in them. Sometimes they will have a part of me in them that, is like a boring middle-aged mom now. I don't necessarily have the ability to like live out anymore. So I'm living a little bit vicariously through them.
Awesome.
Uh,
Awesome.
things that they do that I'm like, oh yeah, I would have done that once upon a time, but yeah.
Oh, I love that. The shadow side, of course, that that Jungian exploration is, through theater and books. Like I've learned so much. I think it saved my life. I'll go right out and say there's probably a couple times in my life where that engaging with the shadow, integrating it instead of rejecting it, has saved my life. And I probably talked about that on the show. But many of you know that my alter ego is Planner Forthright, the angel falling upward, a fallen angel that fought with Lucifer. And people love him. Like he's like, they're like, oh, Planner's in this book. That's great. Like, when's the next Planner book? And he says things that as even though I say a lot, he goes way further than me. So I think you're going to have a huge. It's addictive. People will probably respond really well to it because when we exercise that, it's fun. So talk a little bit about before we really dive into the book. Talk a little bit about your health and wellness world that year.
So it's funny. I started writing in the 3rd grade and have always loved writing, always loved books, but then, life sort of gets in the way. And it took me a very long time to really get back to doing that. And I think it started with yoga so I'm a yoga instructor. I did a yoga teacher training program years ago. You were talking about how, the shadow work stuff saved your life. I have told many people this, and I still believe yoga saved my life. I was in a very, not a very bad place, but there was just a lot going on in my life when I, kind of fell in love with yoga and got into the teacher training program. And through that, then you start diving deep into the energy systems of the body. And then it introduced me to Reiki, and now I'm a Reiki master. And so and then Oracle cards and tarot. And so it all just kind of snowballed into this new part of my life that I really needed at the time and has continued to do so. So I really don't even think, I'm not sure the book would ever have been written had it not been for me kind of finding myself through those other outlets.
There you go. Amen. That's wonderful. I met you, of course, through Tanya. Did you and Tanya meet through Reiki and yoga?
Yep. So Tanya and I both, I still actually teach yoga here at Bliss in Morgantown. Tanya at the time was doing, energy work and a lot of stuff there as well. So we met there. Honestly, we didn't know each other really well. And until she wasn't in the area anymore. And so I would just kind of catch her, when she would visit off and on. And then during COVID, we started doing the video calls and, told her, I was like, you know what? I was really diving deep back into Reiki and spiritual enlightenment and just, that whole side of, energy. And I knew she was great at that. So I said, let's start meeting. And if anyone has never had a session with Tanya as a spiritual advisor, I know she is kind of moving away for some of that now, but if she's still interested in or willing to take a client, I could not give a better endorsement for someone that'll really lead you through everything you need to get where you need to go.
That's awesome. And some of the people here tonight have taken her sessions, and you bring up something that I was going to say at the end of the show. Tanya is actually moving 100% and pretty quickly into that world. And she has a huge meeting Saturday morning. So everybody, please keep good thought, because you all know that is just Tanya's star. That's her core. That's her diamond suture right there. I mean, it's just, yeah. So funny that you say that. We're very, very excited. So yeah, and hopefully we'll have a big announcement next week about that. So let's the book. So going to the website, reading the descriptions, the back cover, all of that kind of stuff. There's a great term, Appalachian Gothic, which I love because I write Gothic Westerns and I love Gothic. Define, never mind what other people say.
Right.
For you, what is Appalachian Gothic?
Well, funny enough, I'm not, I'll be honest, you said, that we were going to be talking about me a lot. That's not always my best subject. I have a bit of that, that writer complex and the self-doubt and the whole imposter syndrome goes on hard. But I will say, I coined that phrase. My publisher and I, during a meeting, we were going back and forth on, taglines and marketing and the back blurb for the book, what we were going to say, how did we really want to, introduce it to people. And I have no idea where it came from, but I was like, oh my gosh, I've got it. So I coined a new genre, a new subgenre of cozy Appalachian Gothic.
Oh, cozy. Nice.
And I was like,
Okay,
it's
so break
perfect.
that down for us. Unpack that for us.
Yeah. So cozy, you'll hear cozy a lot in stories. I mean, it's a big thing in the romance sector. But I think you get that in a lot of other books, and people overlook it because, oh, it's a thriller, or oh, it's a horror. But I don't think that means there can't be coziness. Because when I was writing the book, and this kind of leads into the Gothic part too, I really wanted there to be a feeling, like the feeling that I have, what my home feels like to me, what West Virginia, feels to me. I wanted to be able to get that across to the readers. I wanted to immerse them in the good parts of Appalachia, in the good parts of a small town. There are obviously always downsides to everything, yin and yang. But I was trying really to highlight the good parts. And there is a lot of coziness in knowing all your neighbors, knowing not just your neighbors, but everybody up and down the holler, everybody in town. Now that also means everybody knows your business.
Oh yeah.
But, it's close knit, everybody home cooks meals, everybody has gardens, there's just this safety feeling that I think coziness kind of went, that goes with it. The Gothic, a lot of people, when you say Gothic, you think of the castle spires. But I did a lot of research, and Gothic actually just means immersing yourself in a particular environment. Nice. And to me, I really just wanted to immerse people in what a place like Glen Fork, which is the name of the fictional town, would look like. I mean, I am surrounded, now, not as much because I live a little, not quite as far out, but I was always surrounded by, the woods, the nature, the creeks, the forest, like everything, and I wanted to bring that into the story. I wanted to kind of immerse you in this like feeling of being a part of the nature that was surrounding the people, the characters. So cozy Appalachian Gothic was born.
And succeeded. So here's the point in the show, guys, where I kind of disclosed to a point, to say that I got to read this manuscript, oh man, years ago, not a ton of years ago, but probably 4 years ago. And, and like I said, that's all I want to say about that. That's my only place to say, but I read it 4 years ago, and yeah, the immersion, and having lived in West Virginia, lived in a holler, I was right there. I got it, which I love reading books about places that I know really well. I love that. So that was wonderful. And for me, the cozy is, I just get this image of cable knit sweaters and tea on a couch with a good book, preferably raining,
Right.
but in the holler, because in those 10 years I spent hours upon hours. So that's awesome. And then of course, this is one that you didn't invent. You and I both traffic in it. So what is magical realism / horror for the audience?
So magical realism basically just means that there are elements of magic or the supernatural in the story, but the people and the places are real life. Basically, the people and places are living a life just like you and I could, living in the same types of houses. I didn't build this world. I mean, I did, but it's not necessarily like high fantasy where you build a fictional world and everything's completely different. This could be anyone next door. They're just all going to have a little something extra. So there's that little magical element to the realness. So it's set current day. It sets in a place that tons of people do live or could live. The characters in this story just have a little something extra.
Yeah. And that's really what I love about magical realism. It isn't that oh, what is this, and does it exist, and the veracity of it is part of the everyday world. So when it
Yeah.
creeps up, now that doesn't mean that Kate coming into that world, right, the separation of the hero's journey, doesn't question it, doesn't try to navigate it, because we're taking that journey, and
Sure.
you're taking us into a very specific place, right? Granny Witch Magic, which we're going to talk about in just a bit. But it's there. It's not in dispute. It's not a horror movie or that
Right.
skeptical Blumhouse kind of thing where the boyfriend has ghouls in his face. He's like, it's not a ghoul. We just ate some bad cheese. Like, that's not it. Which is wonderful because it gives you a terrific palette to just go, this is how it is. I'm going to explain how it works and how it affects people, how it's used for positive, how it's used for negative. So that's awesome. So as you said, it was inspired by your hometown, Glen Fork was. So is Glen Fork a specific place, or is it an amalgam?
Glen Fork is not a real town.
Right. Sorry.
The name is fictional. It is based on my hometown where I grew up.
Okay, cool.
Anyone who also lived there or still lives there probably could easily recognize that, like from the descriptions. But now it is a very fictionalized version of my hometown.
Yeah.
I take a lot of liberties, add things. So yes, it's not a real place, but it is very much based on where I grew up.
So it's sort of your Castle Rock.
Yes.
Or what Castle Rock is to Stephen King.
Exactly. Yeah.
I love that. I absolutely love that. So let's now.
And I don't think I answered your horror question. There is some
horror.
Yeah,
please.
Magical. I'll be honest. When I first started marketing the book to publishers, I was marketing it as a magical realism novel. But then when long story, I'll just skip all that. But anyway, it sort of got classified as horror. And there are some horror elements, but for anyone who's, worried that it's a little gross or, gory or there's too much, it's not that much horror. I would say it's more magical realism with a few little sprinkles of horror here and there.
Welcome to the game. Like when I saw that, I said, that's publishers. Because they want to check more boxes, and that's the game. But it really, it really is this. So so in terms of the hero's journey, right? Separation, initiation, return. I don't always break down with authors this way, but this book, it just works so beautifully well. Exterior, interior, intrinsically, extricitly.
Well, I will have to
explicitly.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No. It's your.
That's okay. I will say that. And I know I gave Tanya a shout out already, so I'm going to have to give you one as well. This book definitely would not be nearly as good as it is had it not been for your help. So I think I've called you like editor extraordinaire many times, and that is true.
Thank you.
From the first draft, when you just gave me some of those plot ideas or little tweaks. To the full edit. Yeah, it definitely, for anyone who's thinking about writing a book or has a manuscript, that they're thinking about shopping to editors or publishers or not editors, but publishers or agents, anything like that, I would highly suggest getting an editor who knows what they're doing and, is kind of on the journey with you. I really don't think it would be half the book it is today, would it not been for your assistance. So thank you.
That is an exaggeration. You did all the heavy lifting, and you were just to kind of close this circle and make it a mutual admiration society. I appreciate what you said. You were excellent to work with. You would be so surprised how many authors pay quite a bit of money to fight an editor tooth and nail. And you had.
Are you kidding me? I had no idea what I was doing.
But you did have a great balance, and you didn't use everything that I suggested, and that's exactly what an author should do. Their suggestions. So very cool. So you tell us as much or as little as as you want in terms of, Kate, something happens, right? The inciting incident. She goes through the initiation, and then she has a return, which is wonderful because this is a series now.
It is.
So as much or as little, you're in control.
Okay.
Shoot.
Well, the book basically starts with Kate, our main character, finding out that she has inherited this house, this property, in the middle of Appalachia, in the middle of West Virginia. She has never been here before. She knows nothing about, the state, the people. And she also had no idea that she had the grandmother who left all of this to her. So, from the get-go, it's a very right in the middle of something new, something different, something unexpected. And so she, Kate being as adventurous, I think I mentioned that earlier, her Nancy Drew streak coming out, she decides she's going to take a little trip down the holler and see what she can figure out. So everything just kind of starts from there. It snowballs pretty quickly.
Yeah, it does.
Into the fact that, she finds out that there's a little bit more to this bequeathment that she has received. It isn't just a house. It isn't just, the land. She is also inheriting the magic of her ancestors, which is a very, very big theme with the Granny Witch traditions and passing in Appalachia in general, how they pass down, stories they pass. But yes, to her, she's getting passed down this, this entire ancestral line of magical practitioners, witches, and so it's all about her discovering that and figuring it out.
Well done. Yeah, and there's now, where does Kate come from? Is she like city mouse to the country?
She's a little bit city mouse. Yeah, she comes from Orlando. She was in Florida. I always thought there's one line in the book toward the beginning that always I thought was a really great way in my head that I was describing the differences. She was saying, oh, she was going across this tiny little bridge, and if anyone has ever driven up a little country road in West Virginia, bridges are really not bridges. They might just be, a culvert, with some gravel over top. They're very, some of them are sketchy. So she goes to that from what she calls, these concrete monsters that she's used to driving on in 6 lanes of traffic. So it's a huge, moment for her to see the differences in where she's come from to where she's going.
It's I think all that I want to say, because you did a beautiful job of just giving kind of a broad stats. The stakes get very high.
They do.
So it really immerses you. You're really rooting for Kate. Kate undergoes multiple arcs of change, which I also love too, because she's doing that stranger in a strange land, which is going to have a certain effect. Then she inherits all these things, these traditions she's learning about. There's a little bit of a love interest, but I think it's done beautifully. It's nicely complicated, and there's some wonderful conflicts in it. So I can't wait to see what Kate does in the next adventure. Hold on. Sugar Maple Secrets, which I love the title. It just goes off the tongue like syrup, like maple syrup. Let's see. Okay, so let's talk about Granny Witch magic. Did you grow up with that? Was that part of the tradition? When did you come to that?
I not necessarily. So I did not. I grew up fairly surrounded by country religion, the old country churches, Methodist, Baptist, very much just all of immersed in that. I just happened to be lucky enough to also have grandparents and a mom and dad who were more open-minded than others can be, when you sort of
Yeah.
So when I started having questions or I was always able to explore any avenue I wanted to, kind of on the mystical fronts. But it's funny, I went to Sunday school. I taught vacation Bible school. I grew up pretty much in the church. but I think it's funny. I don't think a lot of people realize how much like those granny witch traditions and that natural, healing, medicinal magic, herbal practitioners, how much it actually feeds into those things. There's not a huge difference.
Mhm.
You find it separated in a lot of places and by a lot of people, but they are very much the same thing. The original granny witches of Appalachia were very much, into their faith. The majority of them, when they would do their healings, would say that they were doing hands-on healing. They were using their hands, calling in, the spirit uh, of God to facilitate the healing. So it all kind of ties in together. And so I think it was sort of a natural progression. I was always a little bit more out there. I liked, the more outside stuff. I got into kind of studying other religions from an early age, and then realized, everything kind of ties in together. So it was just a really natural progression for me. Although I will say there were some people in my area who were the outliers that were a little closer to that, herbal medicine side of things. When I was very young, a little old lady that lived right next door to us, she was 100% Cherokee, and she would tell you openly she was a Cherokee witch. She placed stones around her house constantly to ward off spirits. She would speak to spirits. Yeah, so I mean, it was always there under the surface. It was just sort of this thing that a lot of people either didn't talk about or ignored.
Yeah. Yeah.
They always called her, the crazy lady up the road, but
Uh-huh.
I don't really think she was that crazy. I think she probably knew a lot more than the rest of us.
And I wonder in times of crisis, some of those people who said that didn't go knock on her back door,
I would have. I
after
would.
dark and ask for a little help.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
Yeah.
It's a wonderful world and expresses so well in the book. I come from a Sicilian Roman Catholic background, and people, with the whole paranormal thing, people ask, when did it start for you? And I realized I grew up in it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you have raising
Fair.
from the dead, and you have saints that when they get wounded, they smell like roses, and they can be in two
Mm-hmm.
places. I mean, that whole hagiography and all of that, and it is wonderful. And then it's funny where the line is, where then people go, "Oh no, 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 that's not it at all." So I'll tell you, I got commissioned to work on a piece about Mothman, but very much Appalachia, because Mothman is very Appalachia. It really is. And I started to study Granny Witch magic and watch videos on it, watch all of these oral talks for these interesting people. And one thing that really struck me is when they had to feed the babies and there was no milk, they would take a rag and they would wring it out, and the milk would come. And they say that this is just talk about magical realism. This was a thing.
It just
This wasn't,
happened.
oh, I traveled to another country and paid a shaman to, create milk for me. No, they simply did it. What are some of your favorite examples of Granny Witchbat?
Oh, favorite example. So, warts, to cure warts, a granny witch could spit on a rag and rub it on the wart, place it on there. A lot of times, they could tell you to keep it on overnight or something like that. She'd do her little hands-on healing thing. Maybe she would pray over it. Sometimes they would pray over an injury or an ailment. And then the next morning when you removed the cloth, the wart was gone. So I loved that one. Let's see, what else? I can tell you one thing, back when the Granny Witches, first, came to Appalachia and started kind of moving around the area, Appalachia was isolated. You couldn't go, if you got sick or someone in your family, had some injury, there wasn't a, hey, let's go to the hospital, or even let's call the doctor. The doctor might be hours away or towns away. So most communities relied on the midwives, the granny witches, those practitioners who could do the herbal remedies. Granny witches knew herbs and plants like nobody's business. So if you had a cough, they could whip you up a tea that would take care of it. If your baby had colic, they had a special blend of stuff that they would give the baby for colic that would take colic away. Gosh, what are some other good ones?
I remember something about cows. I can't remember if it was the health of the cow or I can't remember because there's so much with that. I write so much about the Scottish tradition because of my
Right.
pirate character, my cow. Now you've mentioned in passing a couple times them migrating in. This was primarily Scotch Irish. The Granny
Scotch
Witch tradition?
Irish. Funny enough, like Appalachian was a blend of a lot of different cultures. There was a lot of Scotch Irish. There were some African influences,
Nice.
which will be really explored more in book 2. Little teaser for you
Nice.
guys.
Cool.
So everybody's heard of the New Orleans voodoo. Well, in Appalachia in the backwoods, it's called hoodoo. And so a lot of that comes from the African influence. But yes, lots of Scotch Irish, German, lots of German. So yeah, a lot of the European stuff, but they came from all these places. They each brought their own little traditions in. Some of them may have not even been Christian before coming here, but they got converted or picked up the Christianity because everybody else was. But all of these different cultures and all their different superstitions and their folklore really blended to make this unique Appalachian part of it. So, and I talk about a lot of that in the book.
Yeah, you sure do. Which is wonderful. It's just that's fascinating. For me, it's the Obeah coming in with the slaves from the West African coast and mixing with voodoo, and that became a very, very Pirates of the Caribbean of all things touch on Obeah.
Yeah.
You don't hear about it. So these kinds of things like Granny Witch Magic, Obeah, it's good that people know that these exist and that they were a serious part of the culture. Now, talking about that, are there grimoires of Granny Witch Magic, or was this primarily an oral tradition?
Primarily oral. Most of the time it would have been passed from mother to daughter. It's also very matriarchal. It was almost solely women. Not always. Now there were some men, who knew the same things, but mostly women, mostly orally passed down and taught to their daughters. Because they expected them to take up the mantle when they could no longer do it. It was just expected that they would also learn. They weren't just in the kitchen learning how to cook, but they were in there learning how to make tinctures. They were in there learning how to make, certain rubs or whatever, ground herbs they were working on for someone. They did gree bags, which were little bags full of, different herbs, stones, all that kinds of they would give to people for different things, usually good things, luck or something like that. But you can make a gree bag that's kind of like a curse bag.
Yeah, like a hex bag. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, or the Native American tradition of a medicine bag.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Very, very cool.
People would keep them with them.
Yeah. I don't want to put you on the spot, so if you don't know, just say you don't know. But someone in the chat room is asking, is there a Jewish influence mixed in there?
Not that I'm aware of. Okay. They're a big African influence, which a lot of people don't realize, but I don't know that I've seen a lot of Jewish influence. Yeah. Cool.
So what was it? Yeah, let's do this first. So like me, like so many writers, you read a lot. So what are some of your major influences through your life that people really like? I'd like to write like that, or those are the stories I'd like to tell.
Yeah. Stephen King's my favorite. Always has been. Yeah. Once I progressed from the Bobbsey twins and Nancy Drew, then I would get into a little bit more stuff. But like I started reading Stephen King probably before I needed to be reading Stephen King. Let's just put
how old though? I started when I was 12. I pulled The Shining off the shelf at my aunt's house. I was babysitting my cousin when I was 12, and that was young. So
I would say 11, 12, 13 in that range, like much younger than probably is appropriate.
Here we are, though.
But here we
So
are.
here we are.
Yeah, I was always a huge Agatha Christie fan.
Nice.
I'm a big fan of mysteries, the whodunits. I like a good whodunit. But I liked, that Stephen King was always so unexpected. And he would he was very good at taking you to a place that was familiar, but then adding something to it that wasn't,
Yeah.
which I really love. But yeah, Agatha Christie, I always loved her. I was also obsessed with the Little House on the Prairie books.
Interesting. Okay, that's quite a range.
My reading interest. I mean, even now, I will go from anything from horror to mystery to thriller, to nonfiction. I mean, you name it, I'll read it.
How about sci-fi?
I like sci-fi.
Okay.
I used to tease people like I wasn't just a book nerd. I'm a huge Trekkie.
Oh, cool. Right
Like,
on.
huge.
Okay.
And I know everybody says you can't be, a Star Trek fan and also like Star Wars, but that's not true because I do.
Yeah.
I do, but Star Trek was my thing. I was always a big sci-fi fan. My dad and I used to get up early in the mornings and watch Lost in Space. We would watch Star Trek together. So yes, big into sci-fi. And I would
Cool.
love to write sci-fi. I just don't know. I don't think I would be very good at it. I think it'd
I've
be
never
so
done it.
hard.
Yeah, I've never done it. It's a trick because of the technical.
Yeah.
And that's probably the genre that I read. Well, I don't really read romance novels, things like that, but major mainstream drama. Well, romance very much is. What am I talking about? Sci-fi, I'll go to maybe once a year. And I'll read some sci-fi. I do because I do so many book reviews. I'm reading a sci-fi book right now. So the spaceships and the
Sci-fi is probably the genre I read the least of. I am a big fantasy reader. I love fantasy. If I am going to read romance, I prefer it to be romantasy. I want like the world building element in there. I'm not probably, but sci-fi and like just straight up romance books are the ones I read the least.
Okay, we're pretty well aligned. There you go. So that's inspiration. So before we talk about your process as a writer, what was the moment? Because so many people say they want to write a novel, and now, having done it, it is a journey. It's a big journey. It's like it very much people liken it to childhood, and it really is that. There's the consummation period, then there's the gestation period, then it actually comes forth, and you have to do all these things with it to make sure that it grows up and becomes a responsible, functioning part of society when it goes out into the world. I mean, the metaphor is extensive, but what was that day or that time where you woke up and said, I am going to do this. I'm going to write a novel?
I had been toying with the idea for a while. And my biggest hurdle was deciding what to start with. I had so many ideas. I had so many starts. I had notes everywhere, notebooks everywhere, just constant information. But I just couldn't settle. I knew I was pretty sure I wanted to do something in the witch realm. Just because that's just a big thing for me in general. So I was like, okay. And as lame as it sounds, my husband laughed and said, well, you know what they always say, write what you know. And I had read an interview that actually said, don't do that. It's fine. You can research what, you don't know. You don't have to do that. But I was like, well, for my first time, maybe I should stick to the basics. So I said, well, how can I put together, the witchy stuff that I like and what I know? And that's kind of how Glen Fork was birthed. But I just decided to do it one day. I had finally, I was still working a fairly regular full-time job. So when I started, I thought, gosh, I probably won't ever finish this. This is just going to be something I'm going to do for me. I'll see what happens. And I literally wrote the first book in like 20 and 30 minute sessions between like meetings. Like if I would have like one appointment, and then I would have an hour in between. So I would go to like Barnes and Noble or Books a Million in a coffee shop, and I would sit down and open my computer and write for like 30 minutes, and then I would leave, and then I would do it again the next day. And so it came together very slowly. But then like at one point I just turned around and realized it was done. I had written a whole book without even realizing I'd done it.
Yeah. Well, that's it was a famous I think it was Rilke, the poet, was writing to someone and said, if you write just a page a day, that's 350, that's 35,000, it's almost 40,000 words. Writing a page a day, you could write a book a year.
Yeah.
Just writing a page a day. Now, of course, you have to edit it. It's got to be good pages. You got to go through all of that. So did you go out? Were you one of these people who took seminars and watched videos in the book? W. Somerset Maugham said there are 3 rules to writing a novel, but nobody knows what they are. So everything that I do, escape rooms, plays, screenplays the first time, in a way, I just kind of dive in, and then I look at the technical as I'm getting into it, but I don't want it to interfere with the creation process. So how much of that structural education kind of stuff did you do?
Yeah, 0.
Cool.
I winged it.
Well, hey, what you sent me was all the more impressive then. That is awesome, because we instinctually know, right? My first book, I'm about to publish my 19th, and I still have plenty of imposter syndrome. And everyone is you'll find everyone, you got to start over. Writers are in trouble when they just start turning, because there are writers you probably love, and over time they just deteriorate. Like, they don't even care anymore. Yeah. I'm not one of those. I know you're not one of those. But once I learned about the hero's journey, I had already written Jester Knight. And I look back and I went, son of a gun, this is tight. Like, I wrote it in 3 parts. There's clearly the separation. Look at all this initiation. It's so ingrained. It's so in our DNA that if we don't do the paralysis by analysis, and good for you for not doing that, because some people take all those seminars and get jammed up and don't write a word.
Yeah.
So
no,
good for you.
Like I said, I just started writing, and I didn't really expect it to go anywhere. So, I wasn't going to invest a lot of time or money in this education that I wasn't sure was going to be useful to me at all. Now, since then, I have, of course, learned so much. So, hopefully things will continue, hopefully my books will get better and better, because I have, working with you, I learned tons, after it's just, it kind of grew from there. But in the beginning, it was just sort of I just started writing, and it just kind of came out that way. But I think I'll have to credit being a lifelong reader for that. I just think if you read books, it's much easier. It just becomes a part of how your brain works. You've read so much that you know how a story is supposed to be laid out. You know what you like in a character. When you're reading a book, if you think, oh, I don't know, I don't really, think this character was written very well, or, they weren't explored very much, or the story was kind of dull, I think those things really just, burrow in. And then when you sit down to write your own, it comes out a little easier.
That's right. So 2-part question as far as that. Now that the first one's behind you and you've started to learn and all, A, has your process changed? B, has it affected your enjoyment or your experience of reading?
My process has changed, but not a lot. Now I'm still not, going out on these big writing retreats or seminars or enrolling in a bunch of classes. But I have done much more research. I read books like the one you put out on writing. I wrote Stephen King's book on writing. I have read a lot of books on writing since then, and sort of toward the end during the whole process. My process hasn't changed much. I outline a little more now than I did on my first book. The first time I really would just sit down in front of my computer and just kind of write. I would just write. There was not a whole lot of initial planning to, separating it or putting it, how much did I want to do here? How much did I want to do there? I do a little bit more of that now, a little bit more pre-planning, a little bit more outlining of where I want to go. But even with doing that, it often goes off the rails and just sort of takes a life of its own. So my outlines aren't as useful as I probably wish they would be.
No. The best writer we have to write. I love Luigi Pirandello's 6 Characters in Search of an Author. The characters start to speak to you, and a really good writer goes, and sometimes we're like, no, I so don't want to do that. And they're like, but no, just trust me. And they know because it's coming from you, let's be honest. But, and especially as you start to write Kate in the series, you may be surprised and go, oh, I never expected her to do that. Let's see that. So it sounds like you are so right out of the past. So what was the process like of finding a publisher? Because a lot of people just don't ever.
Yeah, this is just so I've said this multiple times. I will say it again. I'll keep saying it. If somebody ever tells you that writing a book is the hardest part, they are wrong. Getting a book published is the hardest part. Yeah. I mean, there are tons of self-publishing avenues now. That's kind of like this new thing that's really taking off. I think that's amazing. I have kind of joined this community on several social media sites with these self-published authors, and some of them do really well. I didn't really think that was going to be the avenue for me, just from for number one, from a financial standpoint. That means you fund everything.
Yep.
That also means, that you have to have software where you can lay the book out. And that, those were just things that I'm more the creative side. I'm the creative process side, that I want to hand everything else off. So I knew from the get-go that I wanted to try to at least to go to that more traditional route. So I entered what the writers call the query trenches. So yes, for about a year and a half, maybe closer to 2 years, I did nothing but send out query letters with my sample pages and, to agent after agent after agent and publisher after publisher after publisher. I originally wanted an agent. I was looking for an agent because I had read online that was pretty much like the better way to go. None of the big guys, the big publishing guys, accept unsolicited manuscripts. So you can't even get in front of a lot of people unless you have an agent to pitch it for you. But during that whole process, and I got a lot of rejections. So many rejections. But, I just kept going. If I would get, in a slump where it was just getting to be a little too much, I would stop sending letters for a month or two. And then I would just come back to it when I felt like it again. I kept a list of whoever I was sending to, and, and through it all, I just sort of stumbled upon them. I had seen a social media post from Poe Girl where they were accepting open, manuscripts for one of their anthologies, short story anthologies. So I submitted my short story. They reached out and said they loved it. Did I have anything else? And I said, as a matter of fact, I do. I have a full-length novel. They're like, we would love to see it. And they were like, the rest is history. They were like, yeah, we want this.
Writers out there, I hope you're listening, because this is the way to do it. You really did, Jessica. Instinctually, you just did it. If there's a right way to do it, that's the way to do it. And I'm consulting a lot with writers who have gone the publisher route and are so unhappy because it ain't a way to get rich. Nobody's making money. It's a very competitive field, and people know that it's about 60-40. I self-publish about 60% of the time, 40% I go with publishers. I do much better because I'm doing so much now in-house.
Sure.
Because I just learned how to do a ton, and then I have some cool graphics people around me just because of what I've been in. But you're absolutely right. There are huge benefits for people to go. And I like that I mix. I think if I was just self-publishing, I would have way more self-doubt.
Yeah.
But there are benefits as a good world. But the advice you're giving, the point is really, really cool. So I love I love the black and white. It works so beautifully.
Thank you.
The illustration is just wonderful, and to me, such an Appalachian nature book kind of thing. So, how involved were you in the cover design, and what is the origin of the image?
So my publisher is great. I have to say that so far they've been amazing. I think it helps that they're like a small indie publisher.
Yes.
They really focus on female authors. That's kind of their thing. So they loved, the fact that they're big into horror. So, that's kind of their, so it works out really well. It's a great, partnership. But they are amazing. So I had 100% full, liberty with the cover. Now they gave me some ideas on things like, hey, did you have something in mind? Do you want to send us some thoughts? And then they sent back some ideas too. And so we went back and forth, but no, the entire thing I had 100% veto power over. And actually that was not the first draft of the title. I really did think that I wanted the rhododendron flower itself featured in some way. I knew that from the get-go. So that's kind of where it started. And just so the rhododendron happens to be the state flower of West Virginia. Each of the books in the series will be named after and include a state symbol. So the sugar maple is the state tree, so and there will be other little state symbols kind of, sprinkled in throughout. But so I knew that I wanted that to be a focus. I really wanted to keep that in there. We tried a couple other designs. We had a few with color. We had some that were busier, and I don't know, nothing worked. It just didn't seem right. And so Graham, my contact said, well, how about we just get something really simple? And I said, yeah, let's do that. And I really like the contrast of the black and white. I have several books now that I was looking at, and I said, well, how about black and white? If we're going to go simple with the art, then let's go really basic. And he sent me the picture, and I was like, yep, that's it.
Yeah, it's wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. So we are nearly out of time. So, and this is going to take a little bit of time, and I say good for you. What are you working on now?
Oh gosh, so much. Much.
Which is awesome.
Yes. So working on now, I'm working on book 2, Sugar Maple Secrets. It will be a series. You do not necessarily, have to read the other books. They won't have to, there's a little bit of a cliffhanger, but nothing giant. They could be standalones, but Kate's story is going to continue. So working on book 2, we are tentatively scheduled to hopefully have that out about this time next year.
So what's it like working under a deadline? That's different, huh?
That is very different. I'll be honest. It's stress. It's much more stressful. Yeah,
it is
because I feel a little bit more pressure.
It becomes mathematical.
Yeah, to make sure. Yeah, I have now. That definitely has changed in my process because I had to put together a schedule of okay, if I want it completed by this date, this is how many words I need to write in each week or each month to make sure I hit that, which I have never done before. So that's different, but I'm working on that. The sort of companion deck, the Oracle cards are complete now.
Oh, nice.
So I wrote all of the descriptions and the card meetings. My aunt actually did all of the artwork, and it's all West Virginia themed watercolors. So they're going to be done, and so all of that is at the editors now. So hopefully I'll have a big announcement soon about when those are going to be out and ready to kind of buy. So finishing up that project, I'm also working on my very first high fantasy world building book, and I'm about 70,000 words into that. So I'm really deep into that one right now.
Yeah.
Also witch related, but this one will be much more fantasy, much more not quite the magical realism. I'm actually building a whole brand new world. So cool. A lot more involved with that.
Nice. Well, congrats. Oh, and so you have a horror story in so Po Boy is there. How's that work?
Yeah, so Poe Girl, which is my main publisher, they're actually out of the UK, so they're based in London.
Cool.
But so they're a sister company to Poe Boy Publishing, who's actually based here in the States. They're out of, I think, Texas. But yes, Poe Boy has a book coming out tomorrow. If you're horror fans, this is a perfect time for it. Spooky season coming around. If you've got Halloween reading list, they are coming out with their 4th volume of their horror anthology. So Gore 4. And yes, I do have a short story that will be in it.
Hold on one second. I don't know what happened there. I wanted to let people know. So that's Gore 4,
Gore
Demons,
4.
Demons, a Halloween, and you want to give us just a little tease of your story?
Sure. The title is Cursed to be Ordinary. Ooh. And it is it's a little bit magical realism with it is a little gorier than the Rhododendron Society, because that's kind of what they were looking for. They asked me if I would be comfortable with that. I said, oh, sure, let's give it a try. But not too bad. But it is basically the story of a girl who is very ordinary, plain, and she happens to stumble upon an object that has some powers that can change things for her. But throughout the story, you realize that might not necessarily be a good thing.
Oh, that is a beautiful trope. I have a shirt that says, by the way, that says, "You say trope like it's a bad thing." I love tropes. I love the familiar territory, and then there's the twist that the author brings to it through their vision and voice. And you have a very strong vision and voice. Folks, I have Jess's website up there, all of her social media. You are doing an awesome job on social media. It's another thing I consult on, and you're just getting it. So keep doing what you're doing, because it's wonderful to watch. And tell us just quickly about the Rhododendron Society earrings. You already have merch tie-ins.
I do. I have them on tonight. You can't really see them because
there
of my things, but yes. So, and I should I know a couple girls here in town who actually, it's called Two Mamas Creative. They make jewelry, they make earrings, necklaces, that kind of stuff. And I was talking to her one day and I said, hey, we should collaborate. My book's releasing in like a couple weeks. Have you ever done any sort of like rhododendron earrings? And she's like, no, but I love that idea. And so they did. So she made these earrings that are like little outlines of the state of West Virginia. They've got the rhododendron flower on them, and I wear them to all of my book events.
Wow. So are you enjoying that? You've had some book signings and all. Did you like that?
I did, yeah. I had a big book release party and signing at Taylor Books in Charleston, a big independent bookstore here. They were fantastic. It was wonderful. I went back to my hometown that inspired the book this past weekend. They had a big Apple Festival, and I went to the library there and did book signings and ran into a lot of old friends. And so, yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
That's cool. Have you had an opportunity to read a little bit of the book at any of these events?
Oh, at my book release party in Taylor's, they did ask me to read an excerpt. Yes.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, I'll be honest, that was my least favorite part.
Right on. I get it. Well, This hour and almost 10 minutes has just flown by. I have very selfishly just completely enjoyed it. I have to legitimately say you are out of the gates fast with your tuition and your practice and your connection to spirit and your roots in West Virginia. It seemed to me to be paying off in spades. So keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you. And thanks to all the people. I've been following the chats. I am not tech savvy and I couldn't figure out how to reply, but thank you to everybody who's been Tanya and Lori. I saw you guys. I appreciate all the well wishes.
Over a cup of coffee, you can go to any of the platforms and just, catch up and let them know. And it helps us. Craig is always the one about, like, share, subscribe. I'm terrible about that. But the more comments there are, the better the algorithms go. So, if you want to engage, that's a good way.
So says TikTok. They tell me all the time.
Yeah, you're learning the algorithms and all. Well, I hope you will come back when the second book comes out, and I will do a review for that one. Obviously, it was unethical to do a review for this first one. Having been somewhat involved, Jessica exaggerated more than a little, but anyway, thank you. Continued success. I'm going to keep watching your social media, letting the audience know cool things that are coming up. So when I see you're having an event, I'll make sure to let them know on the show. And hopefully we'll get together in person. You know, Tanya and I got to get out to WV.
Come on down.
Been a while. Right on. So, all right. I know you got a family you got to get to, so I'm going to let you go. Good night.
I'm hoping that they're in bed.
Oh, well, there you go. That's all right. That's good. So enjoy a glass of wine or whatever your pleasure is, because you earned it. You did a terrific job. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Good night, everyone. See you next week. Peace.